mic off though. That's always in the show somewhere, right?
Yeah. Bob, you're online, Bob.
When was the last time you actually shut that? I will. Choices. You can't shoot it with that. Shane says you can outrun it. And I was watching one the other day, this police officer did easy, and he had a car, and she just grabbed it and ripped it out.
Oh,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna guess.
Yes.
Oh. Maybe I should. They last for a long time. It's on like 3/4 of the day on the battery. As I say, like the more you plug it in, the battery loses that. You're supposed to like let it drain down and plug it in. But that's not how we. So plug it in your battery and it charges.
Oh, you and I are 60, we're both 62? Now we're waiting on the service.
2 days.
There you go.
If you can get your thing fixed. Okay.
I think so.
Did you
Huh?
compared to that one, it'll be another 10 minutes before it stops spinning. And then another few minutes before it actually. Then I get to figure out.
When was the last time you got a new one? Oh, you got one last time.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
This one, yes.
Oh,
Ours sounds so good.
I think
You mean it doesn't sound-
So.
next.
Oh, you got there.
Move on, that's if you like.
Settled in now.
You're almost out of the frame.
That's a good thing.
Some of us should be out.
Make up for it.
Some of us is the reason why. Exactly.
It's 7 o'clock. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Cameron, please.
Councilmember Walters.
Here.
McCoy.
Here.
Palmer.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
Deputy Mayor Brochers.
Here.
Member Davis.
Here.
And Councilmember Cortez.
Here.
Oh, it's working.
It works.
Thank you. Council member reports. Are there any? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to report, we held the meeting for the Discovery Clean Water Alliance and approved the bond to go out for bond for the outfall project. And in fact, I think they laid the last section of pipe in the river the same on Friday. They were laying the last section in. So if you were there, they would have taken you, but
Taking you to the river?
taking you to the river.
Yeah.
So
Sleep with the fishes.
that is it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to move on. I'm asking you to confirm an appointment of a Mr. David Briner to the Parks and Community Engagement Board. His term expires this year, the 31st of December of this year.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. Thank you. I only see an attorney and Mr. Cortez online and just us. So is there anyone for citizens communications? Seeing none. The consent agenda. Does any council member believe that any item needs to be withdrawn? Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Moving on to the business, alternate street naming resolution, Ms. Erdman.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. A few months back, a project came forward that needed to have a street name, and it came to our attention that we haven't updated the resolution in quite a while. So in front of you tonight is just the sample of the two resolutions that are in place. There's resolution number 0806, which is a resolution adopting the City of Battleground street naming policy. And this basically goes through the guidelines for the application, names to be avoided, and then the general description of types and designations. There's also resolution number 09-07. That is a resolution adopting historical names for the naming of streets, parks, and other city facilities. This group of names was put together by a committee that hasn't actually, it's since 2009. So the committee originally did this list of historic names back in 2009. It has been requested that we take a look and update this, but I didn't want to add a draft for you guys to look at as this was done by a committee. So I kind of wanted to put this in front of you to see what process we would like to take moving forward. Would we like to put together another committee for selecting of these historical names? That would be one option. Another option would be just to set criteria for coming up with naming at the time and take away the historical names. So I will turn it over to council to figure out. Oh, and I'm sorry, one more thing before I turn it back over. The other question on the table is how to update this. And then number two, none of these have been codified within our municipal code. They're just live in resolutions now. So that's another question is once we do establish the naming criteria or the historical names, would we like those codified within our code?
So they're just suggestions.
They're just suggestions at this point. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So going through this, a couple things. Well, number one, it's getting harder to get a committee that understands historical things in Battleground. This has become a community that's people that have moved in the last few years or 10 years and maybe don't have a connection to the historical side. I know Bill and Louise Tucker are probably the most historical out here as far as knowing. Luis wrote the book about Battleground, so I don't mind that. I just wonder if we can get a committee that together now, what is that, 2009, so we're 13 years later, that understands, thank you. Between 13 years, but it understands the significance of some of those names, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it can come straight out of that book. She wrote a book on it. So there's a lot of names in that book of people that have been out here. The one thing though, that I think we need to do too, though, is like, as I went through this, there's a lot of names that have already been used. And, should they be coming off the list, and should that list be being updated? I know in the past, just so council, there's three of us. Well, no, Mr. Rogers, Deputy Mayor, you took Mr. Ganley's seat, correct?
That's right.
So there's three of us on council that served with Mr. Ganley, and we named the fire station or the public safety complex after Mr. Ganley. His big concern was, unlike Mr. Kimsey, who has a sewer lift station named after him out at the junction out at the freeway, Mr. Ganley did not want his name anywhere associated with a toilet or a lift system. So we did the community center the public safety after him. And do you take a name off the list then, because we've already got something named after them and not, have them there for a street. I don't know. I mean, I like the fact that we do have streets that are, have some historical perspective, but if you ask probably 90% of the people here, who was Eaton Boulevard named after, they have no clue. A lot of people still call it 199th, right? And so I don't know that it makes a difference that we have historical names or not. I like it, but I'm up for, whatever council would like to do, but I think getting a committee together, maybe we better do it sooner than later if we're going to get a committee that has this historical perspective. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
My intent on this is mostly to have it be self-updating because of the older street names that are on there that have been used. I really don't think we need a committee to get together to do it. I'm not sure that that's required, but I guess what I'd like to see is some flexibility in it. The reason why it kind of came to mind was the last street we had, the two names the developer proposed, I thought were very impactful. And Councilmember Bowman made a good point that, well, it's not on a resolution. So I would like more flexibility. I'm fine with leaving, some of the more historical names on the list and maybe say, Mr. Developer, here's a list we've come up with. If you can add two, especially like historical significance to the land that we're dealing with, I think would be appropriate as well. Maybe there's something there the developer may know better than we do. I just think putting more flexibility in it and making the resolution self-updating. That's it.
Anyone else? Before we go second round, I will state, I'm not for any kind of committee. There's 7 of us. I think we can make a committee out of the 7 of us. And secondly, that I would look for something that everything is 30 years back, maybe 40 years back. So if they're naming streets in 2030, then it would start in 1990. The significance of that person. So if that person or was in city business in 92, he or she can wait until 33. To put kind of a, so that it truly is a historical preference, something to think about on that. Yes, sir.
The only thing that I personally think, this is just me. I don't think council members should be anywhere on this list. I mean, we've named stuff after former mayors and things like that. They were impactful because the city became a city, or the city changed a form of government, or something like that. But I go down through here and I see council members and I see other mayors and I mean, just because we sit on a council, I never want, we talked about this when we got elected. The last thing we wanted was our name on a building anywhere, because it seemed like that's what politicians were, is we want to build buildings and put names on them, and we want our name on it somewhere so that we can show someone why I did that. That's not our building. It's the people's building. And so I kind of feel the same way with the streets and stuff too, is the ones that we've already named were there for a reason. They were a change of government. They were a change in the city. They were the first mayor, whatever it may be. But the rest of us, we're just here serving. So I don't necessarily like that we have council members on there. I'd rather have community members or people that are attached to the property, those type of things. The last thing that government needs is having roads named after them. But we did say we'd name one after Liz Pike. Goes through the school.
Mr. Cortez, any from you, sir?
Nothing significant, Mr. Mayor. I do like your idea, or the idea that you proposed. I think it's reasonable. And I think just having it rest with council rather than going out and seeking to establish a committee would be probably a lot more efficient that way. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
So for coming back, would you like to go, we can go through this list and clean out what's been used, bring the rest forward, and then maybe create some criteria for you to select from in the future, whether that's 20 years of significance, 30 years, and build that into the resolution.
Could it be simply as you said, 30 years? Just say 30, if you're coming back wanting the street name, like the developer, come back and give us a reason why this historical perspective is, or historical, that's older than 30 years. Why?
Like the Dixon Street, it had
Yeah.
two names on there that I thought, I mean, the two
Yeah.
gentlemen who served in Iwo Jima, I mean, that's who
Yeah.
I would have picked. And I,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I think that was a great.
But
So basically lay out criteria for the developer to bring forward suggestions.
I think.
It's just an idea.
DeRocher Drive, yeah.
I've been here since 1989.
Oh, okay, fine. Yes, ma'am.
So this is just
Really kidding.
I'm just throwing this idea out there, but what if we did a citizen of the year, adding the citizen of the year to that list every year?
I like 40 years later.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, no, okay, I see what you're saying. So
Yeah.
this year's Citizen of the Year would not go on the list, but would roll
correct,
as time went forward.
correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Can I say something on that?
please, sir.
The only reason I wouldn't.
You're going to
is-
anyway.
Is,
You're not.
in the past, the Citizen of the Year
That's true.
was very political to me. We had Mr. Ganley, who did a number of things in the community outside of council, who was nominated more than once, who was, the Citizen of the Year was strictly a chamber person. It wasn't a city of Battleground. So he was overlooked a couple different times for a chamber member that, had done, but they took nominations as it was the town of Battleground. That was a chamber event. If we did a Citizen of the Year, then I would be
Right.
fine with that. If it's something that we pick a Citizen of the Year, and we could do this, we could do it with Harvest Days and pick a Citizen of the Year and say, and then they start building that list. But I know in the past, there's been some issues with it because it
Sure.
was a,
Well, we
private
don't have a
organization.
chamber anymore, so.
yeah, so, but I think someone was taking nominations for it.
They are,
They do the rows and
they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, the,
But it's not always Battleground, city Battleground residents.
Yes,
There's people like Lydia, she lives
Yep.
out. in-
Yeah.
anybody who has an impact on this.
yeah.
It's nice.
Are you comfortable with 20 years or 30 years or 40 years? So we have some basis to write this up on.
Let's go for 30.
30?
Everyone likes turning 30.
But what is the 30?
I've done it twice.
What would the marker of 30 be? 30 years. of
30
what?
from whatever year. So 2030 would go back to 2000 for street naming where you're added onto the
I
list.
know, but what's the 30-year?
something of significance, someone of significance in 2000 or thing in significance of 2000.
Okay, so then you have to define it even more. So,
Well,
Well, but-
we're not, so if I'm understanding correctly, we're not really going to give you a list of names. We're going to
No.
give you a list of criteria, and that's set forward for the developer to then find that list and propose them to
Exactly.
council.
so like somebody settled here
Yeah.
20 years after they.
Could be a
settled.
volunteer or someone that was, in the, like a food bank person or something like that, that served at the food bank for 20 years and they finished 2000.
Yeah, kind of complicated.
Yeah, well, I mean, Captain Strong Street, Chief Untouched Trail. I mean, I think we got it.
Okay. I will take a stab at it and bring it back and we'll see what happens.
Well, let's see how you stab it. Make it clean. Moving on to garbage.
Yes.
There you are,
Can I turn
Ryan.
this-
Welcome aboard, sir. You are our garbage man this evening. Welcome aboard, sir.
Been more than one time in my life, so thank you. Good evening, City Council. I'm here to discuss the solid waste planning of the city. Let me see this.
Ryan, can you speak up just a tad? Just a tad. Can't hear
Okay.
you.
Okay. Oh. There we go. Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Good evening, council. So Per RCW 70A.205.40, counties must create a solid waste management plan. Cities have three options. One, prepare their own plan. Two, enter into a local agreement to create a joint plan with the county. Or three, authorize the county to prepare a plan for them. Battleground has chosen option two. In Clark County, there are three options used in regards to solid waste collection. The WUTC certification collection, and WTC stands for Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission. They approve rates and operating conditions. They are a private hauler, and service can either be voluntary or mandatory. You can contract collection with a private hauler. Then the municipality approves the rates and operating conditions. Again, service can be voluntary or mandatory. Or you can do self-haul, where the municipality is in charge of the hauling, and service again can be either voluntary or mandatory. Battleground, Clark County, La Center, and Yakult, use option one. Richfield, Vancouver, Washougal use option two, and Camas uses option three. Here are the various rates for the agencies in the area. Battleground is part again of the WUTC. For our weekly of either 32, 35, or 40 gallons, the cost is $14.05. With the weekly of a bigger can up to $20.46. Rates are determined by the UTC, and they look at CPI, fuel tax, other things to calculate that amount. Waste Connections will continue to offer weekly service, but not for recycling. That'll still be every other week. Waste Connection is going to be providing cans in either the end of 2022 or 2023, so they can utilize a truck with an arm on it. Right now, we all use the cans with wheels or no wheels or whatever. So other items, yard debris similar to recycling. City has an interlocal to piggyback off the county's contract, which expires July 31st, 2023. And La Center and Yakult are also piggybacking. Camas, Richfield, Washougal, and Vancouver contract independently. Waste Connections provide service for all jurisdictions. Our contract firm is prepared to do research as directed by City Council. The pros would be additional city funding through franchise fees. Cons or hauler, the hauler will likely to pass on those fees to the consumer. So in summary, based on rates, it appears that continuing with the UTC regulated service makes sense. And then a question for you, council, would you like our contracting firm to go forward with the research on a franchise agreement?
Just to kind of piggyback on that real quick too, looking at the rates, Ryan and Mark and I kind of took a look at this, and with WUTC, we're
Ryan, will you go back to the rate sheet, like 3 back, I believe it is.
we are definitely on the cheaper side for garbage.
Thank you.
If you recall from the recycling presentation, we're a little bit on the higher side, and that's because I think we don't have mandatory garbage within the city or mandatory recycling. So that's one thing to consider is, do we want to go down the franchise path? If we do go down that with garbage, we are then collecting a franchise fee from Waste Connections. However, that is just getting passed through to the customer. So you'll see that reflected with some of these others that are city contracted. They're passing that franchise fee through to the customer, as we are a little bit on the cheaper side. I think we could get cheaper recycling if we had mandatory garbage, but I think that's the only way those fees are really gonna adjust. So just food for thought before I turn it over to you guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Food for thought. Okay, we'll let that go past it. Yes, sir.
So my biggest issue, and I've asked about this a long time ago, was how can one entity have a complete monopoly in a city and the citizens get nothing back from that. In a franchise fee, yeah, they're paying for it, but we're getting something back that we can put back into the city. With the way it is right now, I mean, our citizens are writing checks to Waste Connections, and I don't know what the total is. It's got to be $1 million a month.
How much?
$1 million, you think?
It's not much.
I mean, I don't know what the total is for,
I thought they said we had around 6,200 customers in the city. Don't quote me on that, but that kind of rings a bell from the last presentation on the recycling side.
okay.
So,
Well, it just, I mean, we have franchise agreements with, and I know they're different with Comcast but there is not another, I don't know, another monopoly that we have that, our citizens don't have a choice, right? Well, they do. They can haul it down to the transfer station themselves right now. And that's the only reason I wanted to look at a franchise fee is because, if we could get something back to improve our city, whether that's through parks or wherever we put that money, right? It's getting something back. So that's, I would like to look at a franchise fee and see what that looks like.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question on that. Are there other services that the city has, like maybe like DCWA or things like that, where we have an agreement that puts money back into the city, like a service that you have to have?
well, they're subject to our utility tax.
So
So
they get a utility, they pay into
they
it?
pay the city's utility tax, but they pass through to the customer.
And does that utility tax go towards the general fund or specifically?
Yeah, cable TV, DCWA, Clark PUD,
Cell service.
cell service, yeah, all those pay a utility tax.
Cable specifically is a franchise fee.
Yeah.
That we have that agreement with them that was just signed again, not that long ago.
And landlines, I think, too, for the
Right, that's the utility
three or
tax,
four of
yeah.
them left in the city, probably.
Well, one thing I do like is that it is regulated by the UTC, that is like a PUD, right? Like a public.
Well, it's a branch of the state. It's a branch of the executives. Yes, someone overlooks their fees and keeps them from doing you wrong.
So that's
Just a
more
bad
appealing
word.
to me than having to negotiate a franchise fee every few years. So I'm fine with keeping it as it is. It's what I'm ultimately trying to say here.
And that's what we ultimately got.
Good.
Thank you.
Mission accomplished.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm interested in continuing the research to see what it would look like.
Well,
About how much cost are we talking as far as research?
That part is a little unknown. That's why we wanted to come and make sure we weren't spinning our wheels first. We are under a contract attorney right now, so depending on how much time this would take. And we did meet with them late last week, and it will take them some time to do. So we wanted to be conscious about that before we set them loose.
I'm not, unless I had like a upfront guesstimate on how much that would cost, I wouldn't be interested in going forward with it.
I know Sean is on the line. He may be able to help us with that.
well, wouldn't it be just as easy to go out to the village out there at Ridgefield and just ask them, hey, what did you guys do? Since obviously they did it.
Yeah, we can definitely do that too.
Or,
It's just, we're
or-
kind of
or-
researching the process on how we would get
Or
there.
call David over in Washougal and just ask David, hey, how'd you do it? And try to save $1 or $2 from attorneys. Yes, ma'am.
So I'd asked you recently how many customers there were versus how many residences there were. Did you have?
I haven't had a
How
chance to
many
pull the
commercial
actual
there are?
residents.
Well, no, what I want to know is how many people don't actually have garbage
Penetration
service?
rate.
Because I'm concerned about mandatory garbage.
Well, that's where I'm heading next.
Okay.
If we're going to do this, then we might as well talk about mandatory garbage. And I've been against mandatory garbage forever in the sense that if Waste Connections wants customers, they do it like everyone else does. They come out and sell you. but it doesn't look like that's as feasible as once I thought. So I've given this some thought and I've changed my mind. And I think with that, if I understand correctly, some of the other cities, I mean, it was, when was it, 5 or 6 years ago, we set up huge dumpsters here behind the high school and we took on tons of trash. Spring clean, bring all your crap out. And tires, they took paint, they took all kinds of stuff. But I think they told us after that was a one-time deal because we're not on the mandatory system. I think that was kind of like, yeah, we'll help you out. So if we're going to move forward with this, then we should make a decision. If you'll put Adrian back up so I can see him. We're going to need to make a decision on whether mandatory garbage is something that we're willing to think about, or we're just going to state, yes, we're going to move to mandatory garbage, or no, we're not. Let's put it that way. There are three choices. So are you back online?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I
So-
just want to make sure that I didn't take you off.
The ones that have mandatory, what is it, mandatory garbage or recycling?
Both.
So are those the ones that are city contracted here?
Yes.
Because their rates aren't even, they're more still. How is this gonna make it better?
The bottom line is the ones that don't have mandatory. Us, Clark, and Center, Yuckle, everybody
Right.
else does.
But we pay less,
No, no.
right? Am I seeing that correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
So how is this gonna be better if we have mandatory garbage?
The
How is that gonna get even cheaper?
recycling was going to be cheaper with it.
The recycling drops.
How much? Do we have their recycling?
Well,
The
and the other, you're looking at their fees as well that they've added on top of that.
The franchise fees and everything?
Yes. So when you look at Vancouver, you're looking at their fees on top of that as well.
Hmm.
And while they're thinking, I'm going to move
Yeah,
on.
that's perfectly fine. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So I don't have a problem with what you're saying with mandatory garbage, because I think the challenge is when we look at some of the stuff that we've tried to accomplish as a council of having beautification, those types of things in our city. If you have a neighbor that decides they're not going to have garbage and they let it pile up, I mean, we already saw what happened. What was it, 2 weeks ago out on 92nd with the fire that happened out there because of all the clutter and stuff that was there. And I'm sure some of that was garbage in the county, and how the fire department, I think they had multiple apparatuses, ladders, and we were part of that. And Clark County Fire and Rescue was a part of that. But from a health standpoint, it's good. If my neighbor decides they don't want to have garbage and they got it piling up in their backyard and we got rats and stuff, rats don't stay inside their fence. They'll be in my yard just like a cockroach is. And so, I think that that's part of being a municipality. That's part of being a city. That's part of growing is, if you don't want mandatory garbage, we don't need mandatory sewer, right? So you could just go outside and,
No.
go to the bathroom outside if you want, I guess. And so that's where I think it's part of being in a city. We can look in the county in places where there's residences that just stack it up and don't do anything with it. And there's health hazards to that. And, there's people right next door that have a house that, it shoots property values. It does all kinds of things. So I don't think it's a bad thing to look at when you're a city of 21,000 people, 22,000 people. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I would be in favor of mandatory garbage as somebody who had an office next to a house that did not use the garbage. It cost me upwards of $10,000 in repairs based on what was attracted because of that garbage. That's just on top of everything else that's been mentioned. It was quite a lot. He's an older gentleman. I mean, he's since passed, but it was quite a lot. And he would just stack stuff up until he could go. And obviously being 10 feet away from that type of situation caused a lot of issues for my structure. Getting back now, do we have to go through this process to do the mandatory garbage? These are separate, but can happen concurrently?
So I think there's some confusion. First, we can do mandatory service under the existing WUTC that we're operating under now. We can also do mandatory service under a contract, which most of the other jurisdictions have contracts. Washougal is the only one that has a franchise agreement. The others do not. So, and I think that is the other question is, if we go, do we want to stick with the WTC? Do we want to go to contract? And if we do go to contract, do we want to go down the path of franchise? So there's multiple questions.
And I guess I'm just not seeing, sounds like it's going to be expensive. I'm not sure I'm in favor of opening it up to a franchise because just to get an extra $2. It seems like if we want to raise funds, we could find somewhere to do that wouldn't cost us lawyer fees. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Just have a clarification question. If we do go to mandatory garbage, one of the sticking points that we kind of sounded like we all had with recycling was that they were only going to come out every other week.
Yes.
So now with the mandatory garbage, could we make them still come back every week for that? Do we know the answer to that, or?
I don't
is that
think so. I
something we
don't
have to
believe
get?
that's an option they've given us, but we can double check.
I believe they said that was system-wide.
I
Okay,
think they're going, everyone is going to every other week.
okay.
I believe that's, if I understood them correctly, and if you'll look, but I think.
Yeah, we'll double check, but I understood that way too. And they did have said that garbage, you will still have an option, but recycling will all be every other week.
Okay.
And I think they said if we wanted to pursue that, it would be a significant cost increase
Yeah, to do.
to do
To have
every
them
week
send a
recycling.
truck out.
Okay. I'm in favor of mandatory collection for all of the reasons that have been lined out previously. It's an equity issue to me. I feel like everyone should be paying their fair share in the city. And if a neighbor is coming to my apartment complex or any other dumpster area and dumping their garbage, it's then creating the potential for us to have raised rates and the businesses to experience raised rates. And so that's the reason for that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not against hearing about mandatory garbage, but I think a lot of the examples that were given would still be an issue because a lot of it has to do with behavioral health, where people tend to hoard things or just aren't clean. My other issue, or another point is you're still gonna have people go into your apartments, putting stuff in your dumpster, because it's only gonna be the city limits that are gonna be required to have the mandatory service. So we're still gonna have people coming from outside dumping trash on us. So regardless if it's mandatory everywhere. But like I said, I'll listen to what it is. I don't see the benefit. I mean, I get that we want to have a clean city and everything, but forcing that onto people, I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. So I'll have to wait to hear what you come back with.
Mr. Cortez, do you have anything, sir?
Mr. Mayor, I am of the same mindset as you are. I was once.
Hold on,
opposed-
can't hear you.
You've never sounded smarter.
That was sad.
Maybe it's your microphone thing
Let's stop sharing this just to see if it's.
There was a microphone that.
Try it again.
At the top.
Can you hear me now?
Nope.
Unmute yourself.
Not gonna do anything for mine.
Huh?
It's over there.
Can you write it down?
Do you know signs?
Blink your eyes.
No worries, if that's okay. if you
Hold on
can't
a
hear
minute.
me,
Let's see if we can figure it out right quick.
I thought it ran through your computer though.
It runs through the microphones over there. Doesn't run through here. It might be on his end.
Oh,
He's unmuted.
oh, well, man, you gave it your best shot.
No worries.
Just start filibustering it.
Nope, no can do. Ms. Urban?
Can you hear us, Adrian?
I can hear you.
I have no idea.
We
And it even
can,
shows, it shows his mic being active too.
yeah, we can't hear you. So
Okay, don't worry about
sorry,
it.
big guy. Okay.
And the speaker.
I'm wondering if it's ever, oh, Miss Smith, can you talk and see if we can hear you?
Can you call in?
Sorry, I had to get to the unmute. Yes, I can hear Adrian. Can you guys hear me? This is Alicia.
Can you slide that to the right? What does that do?
Okay. Do you have this?
Because that shows it's.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, maybe. can you
Well, it's
try?
because if I have this one on, it's being ran through there, then
Yeah.
it echoes. So this one should be shut down. That
So
one should be on.
Can pick it up. Well, we're not going to do anything until you come back. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll set it. So
Maybe
Ju-
Jazz is
just-
not hearing questions. Thumbs up.
So
just,
they can all hear each other talking, but we can't hear them. So it's got to be something
oh, well,
with the microphones.
oh,
For
well.
the speaker?
No worries. He understands us. So what if, it sounds like there's at least 4, maybe 5 people who are interested in mandatory garbage. So let's
see if
kind
I
of
can
work
hear.
towards that system. Ms. Urban?
So with that though, so you're saying if we want to make the decision to go to mandatory garbage, are we wanting to do that through a contract or are we wanting to do that through WUTC? Those are some of the decisions that we need to make.
Well, I think pretty much mandatory garbage, just, if we just took plain numbers, looking at what we have tonight and not, Mr. Cortez can thumbs up, thumbs down, looks like there's 5 people who, I've 6 and a maybe, who are interested in mandatory garbage. So the question comes, let's wait, speak to the folks in Ridgefield and Washougal? Because Camus won't do us any
Washougal
good.
Camus does their own
Washougal has
self-haul
a franchise agreement.
and Washougal is a franchise agreement. So we can do mandatory under our existing interlocal, or we
Exactly.
can go do a contract with,
Like
Waste
Washougal's
Connections.
done.
Like.
or we can do a franchise agreement. So the franchise is going to take time. The franchise will not happen
Yeah.
right away.
Okay, so then let's just talk to
That'll
Ridgefield,
take 7 years.
see what they did.
They
See if-
do, they have a contract
See if
directly
they'll
with them.
share that with us. Just, I mean, they don't have to give us everything they have. Well, who knows? Who
Well,
cares?
it'll be us having to approach Waste Connections for our own individual contract based
Exactly.
on size of city and so
But,
forth.
but let's see what,
Their contract.
how they work it through.
And I want to see what the recycling rates would be with mandatory. I assume
Yeah.
that's something you'll bring to us.
Yes.
I think that's the only way our recycling rates
Yeah.
would go down is with the
That's what they said,
mandatory,
is
so
if
they
we
have
have
more customers, guaranteed customers.
So it didn't
So-
go down from going every other week, but it will go down.
Well, but I mean, just looking at basic life now, as you buy a 16-ounce box of cereal a year ago and now it's 13 and a half. So the shrinkage is what that is. Anyone else about garbage? Seeing no one. Anything else, Ryan, Ms. Urban, from you that we might have missed?
I
Nope.
don't think so.
We're moving on. We're moving on to you, Ms. Urban.
All right, administrative reports. I have one quick one. Our resolution for the emergency declaration is still in effect. So I'm guessing you guys are okay with taking that away. The only thing really left on there was basically granting some additional authority to myself, ability to add increased janitorial services, which we have stopped doing since we've all been back in no masks. Then it does give us the ability to change the council meeting from in-person to completely virtual within 48 hours prior to the first meeting. In reality, OPMA regulations were just updated with the new legislature to basically take into account the virtual components and update the standards because it's been years since that has been done. So everything that we have in our emergency declaration is pretty much covered under the new OPMA anyway. So if you guys would like, I can put together a resolution at the next meeting to take this
For the 18th.
for the 18th to take it off. If everyone's good
Anyone
with
have any
that.
problems about that? Seeing none.
Okay, and then it'll be what,
Thank you,
2
sir.
years and so many months while we've been underneath of it. We'll have a
Don't
countdown.
burn it. There may be a need for it down the line, but hopefully not.
And I will turn it over to Mr. Crummett for another potential annexation.
Good evening, council. We've got another person interested in coming into the city of Battleground. This is the Hanson property. It's just west of State Route 503 and south of 25th Street, or what is northeast 244th Street in the county. I've talked to Mr. Hanson. I had a casual conversation with him and said, hey, have you talked to your neighbors? I will be recommending that all those properties be brought in. So I indicated that it would be ideal if he could work on getting all those to come in before this comes before you. The decision that really I just need before you tonight is to set a date where you could have a conversation with Mr. Hanson about this boundary and the potential for this to move forward.
Yes, because I believe in council, as we talk about annexations, as we move forward, as people come and surrender, that they should come and talk to us so that we can actually lay eyes on somebody and ask him, her, whomever, did you speak to the person to your north? And we know that one of the two rectangulars that run vertically, one of them said no to us already. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's the one on the right. Some time ago, can't remember why, it doesn't matter. But I would prefer in the future if the city, if someone wants to surrender, that they come in and speak in front of us. Is that okay with the council? That we hear from the person that wants to do it and they don't deputize the city to speak on their behalf?
Yeah, and just to clarify, the statute actually, under the petition method, the statute does say the first thing is the council sets a date with the applicant to discuss the boundary specifically, to modify it, accept it, or to reject it.
Perfect.
So anytime, Mr. Hanson's available to speak any Monday, so at your pleasure.
Perfect. And then you had a question.
Yeah, wasn't this area a sewer or water nightmare?
I don't know.
They have
Do you-
some issues. Mr. Phelps.
Are you talking from a wetland perspective or a water service perspective?
Water service.
Yeah.
Is that all been remedied over there? So would we,
There,
No, it has not.
it was sewer, wasn't it?
It was water from my
It was
understanding.
water.
With the way the water service boundary is set up, this is a most interesting area of the city. And so there's some issues with us taking it, CPU keeping it, and trying to get the homeowners to
Step up.
agree is a better word. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I
So-
do remember that.
This
Now-
might be an annexation where we consult about getting an annexation agreement before we would take anything in as it relates to utilities.
Yeah, good job. I do remember that now.
That's when Mr. Phelps was here.
Yeah.
if we have insight on that?
Anyone else? What kind of date are you looking for? The 18th, the first meeting in
Our
May,
schedule is pretty open, so we could.
the
take it.
18th,
That's fine. Yeah.
2 weeks from
If
tonight?
that's good with you, Mr. Crummett.
Sure.
2 weeks from tonight, is that okay with everyone?
Sure.
Seeing everyone nod their head, we'll say yes.
Okay.
Okey doke,
That concludes administrative reports.
that's the ballgame. Council communications, are there any? I have one. Something happened this past week that I'm sorry, well, Mr. Cortez, I was going to ask you, but that would be mean. Something happened this week that for the 14 years I've been coming to city council, 4 years sitting next to the door and 10 years here, I was told was in my words, a sacred piece of property. That this property had one reason and one reason only. And 5 years ago, roughly, I believe, we asked the city in the spring to come up with a list of properties that weren't being used and to have them appraised. We were in a bind, just like families. We had decided that, we couldn't cut back on vacations and cell phone service and cable, so we had to look and see what we had. We looked at all the property in the late spring, early summer. Property came forward. Council authorized the city manager at that point to start the appraisals. Fall came. We asked the city manager again to start the appraisals. Late fall came, and it came to the point where it boiled down to one piece of property, the one piece of property behind Albertsons, 7.5 acres that the city owned. I've been told since I've been here that that property was ordained by the Almighty, again, my words, for a fire station. And that it had every, the hallmark was for it. And in 2016, I think it was 17, the city kept pushing back. The city kept telling me and 2 others on the council at that point that it was very short-sighted, that as we moved west, there would have to be a fire station to service the west end of our city. Well, we kept pushing. Came December, the city had convinced 4 of our members that was going to be and will be a fire station. And we didn't get the appraisal. So some things have been answered for me this week. First of all, the appraisal came through, and that property appraised or is up for sale for $1.975 million. The problem is that we gave that property away. We took the word of the city and we took the word of other experts that it would always be that. And so we, on the fire annexation, gave the property to Fire District 3 on a handshake. I would ask the council in the future that we very closely listen to what experts, traffic experts, sewer experts, water experts, whatever expert comes in front of us. And we do what Mr. McCoy said 2 weeks ago, that we work on behalf of the city. And the city's, what benefits the city is all we're concerned about. And that I would also ask in the future that the 7 of us, we don't work on handshakes. It cost us. It cost us big time. I'm disappointed because, again, 14 years I was told what that was. And here we are now on the short end of that stick. You're more than welcome to, sir.
So, Mr. Mayor, that was, that piece of property was the city saying that would be a good place for a fire station, but the city is not in the fire business. We thought that we would need another station had ours gone away. When we did the fire annexation, the reason that property went to the fire district was to build a fire station or to find a piece of property to build a fire station. It wasn't necessarily for a fire station. And I think I don't think it's right for us who aren't in the fire business to determine where that station goes. When we looked at this and we went through this in depth with our contracts, with annexation, what that was going to look like if we were going to go at it alone. And if we were going to go at it alone, how much money that was going to cost our citizens. I don't think personally this did not cost our citizens because the fire district represents our citizens now. that fire station, the money that they are getting for that property will be spent on a fire station or property that will benefit our citizens in this town. It's just not that piece of property that was beneficial for them, or did they think was the right place for a fire station? So I don't think, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but I also, being one that went through the process with the fire district, I don't think that that's a right representation, that we didn't get anything from that. We just gave it to them. That was part of we had nothing. We were bringing something to the table for them to take us, annex us, do something, because we made that decision that we weren't going to go at it alone because it was going to be too much money. And so that's what we brought to the table for them to say, we will look at annexation, and otherwise we'd still be under a contract, and we know what we saved just in the contract alone with them. So I don't think it's right to say that it was our issue. Now, the appraisal of it, that's a different story. When we asked for the appraisal, I won't disagree with you there, but it wouldn't have changed anything, I don't think, in the fire contract or the annexation.
I will state that your memory of what CCF&R had told us over the years and what Fire District 3 have told us over the years differs from mine, and we'll just go with that. But all I'm asking in the future is, if, when it comes to it, that the 7 of us, look, that's our only job here. Our only job is to look out over the city and do what's best for the city. And if we can do that in the future, then we'll all be happy people. In my opinion, I think we dropped the ball in this case, and I'll stop with that. And yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, do we have any details or information from District 3 on what their intentions are?
So when we did the fire annexation, Mr. Bowman is correct. We had to come to the table with something, and that property was what we came to the table with. At the time, they were still completing their studies to determine if 2 stations were needed in the city or if 1. They have, as part of the master plan over at Public Works, there was a fire station slated into that. And then the Albertsons property would have been the 2nd station, so we could serve both the east side and the west side. Once they completed that study, they did realize that a centralized fire station could accommodate and work well to serve the city as a whole. So they are looking under contract to purchase a piece of property that is centrally located. As part of the fire district interlocal, they either had to place a fire station at Albertsons, or they have to sell that and use that money to go towards the purchase of new property or new construction. Otherwise, it comes back to the city.
But they are making progress on getting a new station. We're
The
still,
land.
Yeah, they are working on
They've
acquisition
got a
of land.
contract, I think. for
They're
the
under
land.
contract, but they have not pulled the trigger, as that I believe. So
okay.
they're still waiting on it, work out a
So
couple
we're
of
still
details.
getting,
Yes, they're
still
moving
getting-
forward.
okay.
And they still, I mean, there's not gonna be a station.
Will
there
the
until a
training
bond.
center still be included in that new facility?
I'm not 100% sure on that.
I know they really wanted it, so hopefully. It'd be awesome.
Anyone else?
I know that's how
Okay.
they were able to sell it to a lot of us when we voted for it, that was a piece of.
I do know that all their conversations that they would like to have that as a piece of it. I haven't seen, they don't think they have any designs or anything to put forward. So
Our next meeting is the 18th. Is there a 6 o'clock meeting?
yes, there is.
There
We
is.
will be talking about TBD.
TBD. Well, we'll see everyone on the 18th, starting at 6 o'clock. Thanks again for coming.
She got a big grin on her face.
Dude, I remember the guy. I was freaking in Tacoma at
in a long time.
3:30.
You didn't hear him rocking out in his car?
I know, dude. That was so my daughter would shut up. And I didn't realize, I was like, well, the video didn't come on, and I see that the mic's on. I'm like,
Thank you very much. Have a good
here we are listening to.
So your 2-year-old listens to Kanye?
No, it's
That's what it sounded.
it's I'll tell
Will
you.
Smith.
No, she listens to everything.
She wants to go around
It's
slapping.
it's Black Eyed Peas and J Balvin, Ritmo.
Oh, the Black Eyed Peas.
Ritmo.